Hello, everyone. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm Christos, the contributor program manager. I'm here with you wonderful people today. Hello to everyone who's watching the video afterwards. Actually, I've seen that the views are quite high, which is super nice. So thank you all for joining and for tuning in. Today we have an amazing group of people. So I'm gonna pass it on for other people to introduce themselves. Let's go from I'm gonna pick a person and I'm gonna be like with Sridhar. Wanna introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Sridhar and I'm working as a full stack engineer at Bangalore-based startup for Deepen Stack. I'm a contributor at GitLab from past 6 months. Yeah, sorry I couldn't speak much because there is a lot of noise and right now I'm traveling. Sorry.
No worries. Thanks for joining. Do you want to pick the next person who's gonna introduce themselves? Okay, I'll pick one. Marco.
Okay, well, I'm Marco. I'm not a web developer. I'm a desktop developer mainly. And I started contributing to GitLab 3 months ago, more or less. And yeah, since then I kept contributing, basically.
Yeah, pick one, pick one.
Because, you want me to do it now?
No,
so yeah,
pick one person to introduce.
Oh yeah, well, I guess we could introduce David.
Hi, everybody. So my name is David O'Regan, and at the moment I am the EM, the full stack EM over on the Create Editor team. And our categories previously have mostly revolved around the editing experience at GitLab. So content editing, code editing, web IDE, source editor, single file editor. And we are now tackling our newest category and our newest addition to GitLab, which is remote development. So we're really excited about that. And it's going to be a big focus for us and the team for the next, well, for the foreseeable future, essentially. I think Fatima is the only person left.
Yeah, I'm Fatima. I'm a developer evangelist. I work with Christos at GitLab. I'm excited to be here and listen and learn. And I might turn off my video as I eat my now cold oatmeal.
All right, thank you all. I enjoy your, should I say breakfast? No, it's noon, lunch, breakfast. Yes, breakfast, West Coast. All right, Marco, the floor is yours. You're gonna tell us about the things that you've been cooking with another group of amazing contributors.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, me, Lee, and Andrew, that are part of the GitLab team members, started doing some Twitch streams over on Twitch that we then uploaded to our YouTube channel that we opened. Where we basically go over, pick an issue, go over it and work on it, open the MR, and basically we try to don't look in advance at what the issue is about, so we can show the full thought process about how to tackle the issue. And yeah, I'm gonna be posting the YouTube link to the channel, the link to the YouTube channel and the Twitch channel on the agenda, if that's okay. Because I don't know if the chat will be visible. So yeah, I'm gonna put them in there.
Also, just something to highlight around that. Generally, there is the Discord server, which currently it's unofficially supported by GitLab. It's a community Discord server right now. A lot of community members, let's say, meet there, and there's a lot of activity. And this actually is one of the results of people getting together. It's like coding sessions and how you approach stuff. So there is a link into the agenda doc in a 0.7 for the Discord server. Feel free to join if anyone's interested. Hi, Siddharth. Sorry, always killing your name. Nice to see you. All right, so should I just pass it over to David? David, it's really a pleasure for having you with us. David is one of the people that is, for me, is really close to the community. I've seen a lot of, a lot of feedback, always valuable feedback, always looking after for the community and reviewing MRs, and always there. So I really appreciate that. So thank you so much, and I'm really happy that he's here with us today to talk about, your pronoun is he, his, right? Sorry. Perfect. So I'm really happy that you're here with us today to talk about, whatever you feel more comfortable in a way, but also, about how we can have more people contribute to GitLab, like best tips on tricks, how to approach an issue. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, super stuff. It's great to be here. So funny enough, when I started at GitLab, before I worked here, I was a community contributor back in the good old days when I had joined Jitter first before anything else. So I have a really, 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 really big passion and soft spot for our community. And I really enjoy working with everybody. It's fantastic. So what I'm going to do is, on the create editor side, we're very lucky. We do get quite a bit of community interaction, specifically ever since we took over the pages category. We have a lot of people who make use of our GitLab pages, and we get a lot of traction on that for people wanting to come in and make it better. And we also have a handful of categories like the wiki, where people feel comfortable submitting changes. And we have the web IDE, which is used by an awful lot of people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'll take us through a couple of minutes of what it would look like from start to finish to get set up and actually to discover an issue that is suitable for a community contribution in the editor team, and then how to actually engage with us on the editor team to get a triage and reviewed and looked at. On our team as well, over on the editor side, we have some really fantastic developers who are also part of the community. Like we have Paul Slaughter, who's a really, really big community advocate. And so when in doubt, feel free to reach out to the editor team and we will try our best. If we can't figure out what the problem is, we'll try and triage it. So let me share my screen to start with. And I'm going to assume everybody can see it. And if you can't, feel free to raise your hand. But I'll start with, this is our handbook page. This is the Create Editor Team handbook page. If you are at any point interested in the things that are going on inside the Create Editor team, you are free to visit our handbook page and find out our direction. You'll find a list of our current team members, the categories we care about, links to our ongoing OKRs, and the things that we're really, really passionate about developing. And if you want to get involved, feel free to have a look at any of these categories and see how we can navigate from there. So this is probably well known to everybody here, but I'm just going to highlight it again, which is on our actual website, theaboutgitlab.com, we have a section on how to request help and actually engage with the community, merge coaches and people around GitLab who are available to help look after you if you do submit a merge request. So this section is really, really helpful. I tend to come back here quite a lot. We have the triage bot, obviously GitLab bot at help me. You can ping any of the merge request coaches. We have a link to the team page outlining who's a merge request coach. Or if you have any major problems, you can either use the Jitter channel for instant feedback or even email the contributors at gitlab.com. So to get started, the first thing you're going to need to do is grab yourself a copy of GDK. So GDK is the GitLab development kit, and it is maintained by us here in GitLab. And if you want a fantastic breakdown of how to install it, navigate here to the GitLab development kit repo and have a look inside the doc folder. The doc folder contains the basic outline for how to configure the GitLab development kit to be set up to actually contribute to GitLab. When you're contributing to GitLab, you're going to start with an issue. And so if you want to look at contributing specifically to the editor team, our backlog looks something a little bit like this. How you know an issue is ready for consumption on the editor team is it'll have the ready for development label. So I would always advise people to go in, filter by the group editor, and then filter by the ready for development label. On the editor team, we are just now adopting the seeking community contribution label. So I'm refining our backlog over time to add more of these labels. So you can use this label, but if it's marked ready for development, you're pretty good to go to pick it up and run with it. On the editor team, keep in mind, not every team uses weights. On the editor team, we do use weights. We adhere to the Fibonacci sequence. So as a new contributor, I would always suggest by filtering the issues by weight from lowest to highest. A weight 1 is a very straightforward issue. It usually means the actual issue itself is really, really well refined, that there's a lot of information in the issue for people to actually just pick it up and run with it and develop. Once you start getting into 5s, even 3s, it can be a little bit more verbose, or maybe the issue itself doesn't have the information specifically available for you to just jump in and develop. But you can always ping either me, or you can ping Eric, or you can ping anybody who is on the editor team, depending on the front end or back end label, and we'll try and help you. So I'm going to show you what a well fleshed out issue from us looks like that is ready for a community contribution. And we have this web IDE issue that was actually created by Lead Ticket. It was highlighted recently enough, which is in not dark mode, which is what I'm using here, but specifically when we use the gray theme, we have a CSS bug where we can see that the text that's being represented in our commit box, our commit message, is really, really difficult to read. So Lee has gone ahead and he's created a nice explanation in the title. He's linked the Slack conversation. Now, unfortunately, most people won't be able to access that because that's a closed Slack. But what we do to make sure that this issue is consumable for our community is we will first off label it correctly. So we adhere to correct label hygiene. So this is specifically a front end issue. It's a front end weight of 1 because we're just changing some CSS, and it belongs to the editor team. If we scroll down, we can see that this is the type of refinement that we try to adhere to on the editor team when we're actually providing the community with issues. So this has been marked as seeking community contribution. And because of that, I've done a little bit of initial triage, initial investigation to outline what I think is a possible fix. And usually the things we will try and include are the files to look at, how you could possibly go about testing it, and the actual case for success. So the definition of done. So in this specific, we can see that, okay, so this actual regression was introduced by this commit. We swapped from inputs to a GitLab UI component. And this had a bit of a specific regression to the web IDE because we actually use an override CSS file. And all that means is we have our general site CSS, but in the web IDE, we have some special CSS. And this broke after we migrated to an in-house component. So I've left a rough solution for an MVC that would actually fix this problem, but it doesn't address the root, which is now that we've migrated over to our GitLab UI components, we, in theory, could actually do away with the majority of this file, which would be the right solution. However, that will require more investigation, more testing, and that may not be something that somebody from the community wants to pick up. So in those cases, there would generally be a back and forth between either myself or one of the front-end engineers on the merge with this issue to outline what our definition of done was. And if we wanted to create a follow-up from that, they could work on it. So with something like this, if you were to pick it up, where would you begin and how would you start? So let's assume you've downloaded the GDK and you've set it up and you're successfully able to do your pull request or your merge request, I should say. So we'll grab a terminal and your GitLab development kit should usually start on the master branch. We'll open up a code editor. So I'm going to bring this over here. So we have a code editor. You can see I was already looking at some HTML this morning. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a terminal inside this code editor just to make it a little less jarring so we're not context switching. A tip for anybody submitting community contributions, when checking out a branch where you're targeting an issue, I would always suggest prefixing the branch name with the issue number. This will give you the benefit of automatically pre-filling your merge request with the labels and the metadata from the issue, which can be really helpful and really time-saving. And even if you're a little bit lost on how to reach out to merge coaches or the people on the team, chances are pretty good we'll pick it up if it has the right label hygiene, I should say. So if I have a quick look and see, this issue is this number. So I would very simply, something along this line, web IT, gray theme, CSS fix. So when you're using the JDK, you will run a command, which is JDK start. This will actually physically start the JDK for you. I'll run it here. You can see that we're going to start up the local development GitLab kit. This will let you navigate to a local instance of the GitLab project running at localhost 3000, or maybe a specific URL if you configure it. And you can work away and chop and change files and make changes locally. So let's pretend we'll go ahead and say that we've done all of our local testing, and it's specifically this file that we're looking at. And I would trust people to do a better job than I'm about to do on this, but we have our file. I'm just going to make a small change to our file just for the purpose of showing how to actually spin up the merge request and get help from the community. I don't make any claims that this is going to be a good solution. So let me have a look here and have a read. So if I change this, so essentially, yeah, what we want to do is we basically want to include for the input elements, we want to include this color override. So let's do it. Let's include the color override. Now, I just happen to know off the top of my head that what we want to include, the color override, is just on the input. Don't copy me on this. Use either specific class namings or ideally remove CSS. Don't add CSS. General CSS naming like this is not a good convention nor something we would pass in a review at GitLab. But for the moment, we just want a change. So I have my change, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add it, and I'm going to commit my change. In GitLab, we use a changelog prefix in our commit messages. This ensures that we are representing in our changelog what our changes are doing. So specifically, what we're fixing a bug here. So the changelog for that is changelog fixed. If we were adding a feature, it'd be changelog added. And there's rules around when you can add a changelog and when you can skip a changelog. We also have specific rules and specific syntax around if you're changing files in our EE folder, which is our enterprise folder. At the moment, you can see I'm not, based on the file tree here, I'm not in EE. So we're actually just changing it in our core version. So I'm going to add a commit message. And we have a wide selection of rules about what our commit messages can be. It's all listed on our docs.gitlab.com. If you just search for changelog, you'll see. And so I'm going to just say fix CSS, except my terminal isn't working. Please write better changelogs than me. So I've made my change. I've done my insertion. I'm going to push now. And usually I would recommend using force with lease. Force with lease is very similar to git force, except it'll actually check upstream to make sure there's been no other changes to avoid overwriting history. A very, very important tip for Git is that if you are going to use force, it's perfectly acceptable as long as you are the only person on the branch. As soon as you share a branch or you share a merge request with somebody, do not rewrite the file history. If it's just you and you're hacking away, go nuts. But as soon as somebody jumps on to review or offers a suggestion, please do not rewrite the history. It's really important on the community side too. So if my internet holds up, this in theory should push. It gives me a URL to spin up a merge request. Super stuff. I'm going to go ahead and just jump to it. And we can see we've been given a template here. Now, on the community side, for those looking to engage with GitLab, the one thing you can do to make our life easier and push your merge request through quicker is to really have your meta in place. And that just basically means the description of your merge request, screenshots, and ideally a good guide on how to replicate or test it locally. That's what maintainers will be looking for. So we have a describe in detail. Usually you can add a link back to the issue if the issue is fleshed out enough. You can outline the steps you took to solve the problem. Screenshots before and after. A video might even be better if it's something that requires context. And then steps. as to, I assume somebody on the maintainer side, specifically on the front end, would come in to fix this. So I would give them a set of steps. I would tell them, hey, spin this up, navigate to this page, click this button, you should see this. And that will, that for you on the community side, that will reduce a huge amount of friction and reduce your back and forth and review time. So since I've prefixed the merge with the issue number, we can see that it's actually gone ahead and assigned a lot of the merge meta, which is fantastic. And it automatically knows what issue this is related to, which is super stuff. We don't have any dependence. This is if specifically you're not targeting master. This might be, you might have a merge that needs to come ahead of this. You might use this to reference it, and this will keep it locked in place. Marco, do you have
yeah, I'm just a question. Even if we are contributors, we don't have access to merge requests. Are the labels added? Because normally we won't be able to use GitLab bot to add the labels.
Yes, so normally you won't be able to interact with the sidebar, correct? But I'm assuming if you prefix the merge with the issue number, it should pre-fill the meta for you. So you should at least get a selection at the beginning, if I'm not mistaken. Although feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, we probably should fix that on our side.
I can try.
Please do. Please try. If that's something that we don't do, that might be something I would look into, because it would be important for getting these merges picked up quicker. I know we generally already apply a community label, and specifically for people who are their first time, we apply first. But please do try. Let me know.
Okay.
Once you've gone through these steps, ideally, whoever is going to be jumping into the review will handle the majority of the meta if it needs to be updated. And I would advise most people to enable the squash commits when the merge is ready. Get your first commit right, get it super right. And then it can be up to the maintainer to decide whether or not the commit log is valuable enough to keep. I would throw that to the maintainer as opposed to you specifically trying to decide that, unless you feel very strongly about it, in which case feel free to leave that unchecked and make your case to the maintainer. We've created our merge request. Our merge request is up and running. So specifically, the next part is what we want to do is we want to just going to move this out of the way so I can see what I'm doing here. Specifically, what we want to do now, this is the part where we've created our merge request. If the merge request was automatically assigned the community label, the GitLab bot will trigger and a couple of things will happen in terms of giving us some prompt and some help. But if it doesn't and you're looking to engage with people, you can at GitLab bot help to give you an idea of how we can get some help. You can also use a handful of other commands now that are available to us, like at GitLab bot ready, which means this merge is ready. We can see here, this is pinged a merge coach specifically. But we also have GitLab bot ready, which in theory should do the same thing and let people know that this merge request is now ready to rock and should be ready for review. This should do a couple of things. This should move the merge into workflow ready for review. And it should, if somebody is not assigned, ping somebody. So we can see there, it's moved in, it's ping the same person. Thank you for helping. So getting familiar as a community contributor, getting familiar with our triage bot and our GitLab bot is probably one of the biggest things you can do to help yourself out and to reduce friction, to have a back and forth. If all of these were to fail, if all of these methods, you can always check the team page of whoever the issue belongs to and reach out directly to one of those team members if you're finding that you don't know who to touch base with. Generally, we on the editor team tend to be pretty engaged with the community. So if we find community contributions coming in, we tend to prioritize them. And that is just a very quick, rough snapshot of beginning to end on how to kind of navigate, specifically on the editor team. We lean very, very hard on our labels. So if you are looking for ways to engage with the editor team, navigate to our team page, have a look at our categories, and you can filter down the issues by the categories. And anything that you tend to see in the backlog is up for grabs if it's not already in development, and we'll be more than happy to engage with you and kind of point you in the right direction if you want to contribute. And keep your eye out for the category remote development. That's the next big one. So if there's any aspiring community Go engineers out there, keep an eye. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, considerations?
Not really about this, but I might have a question that's not related to this, but it's related to the editor team, I guess.
Yeah, fire ahead. Let's hear it.
Yeah, and is the editor team in charge of the Markdown editor and how Markdown is rendered on the page?
Yes, we are currently in the middle of developing something called a content editor. So the one that sits at the moment in the comment boxes and issues and emerges doesn't belong to us, but will be replaced in the coming months by our version, which is built on top of TipTap.
Oh, okay. So you're already making some changes, because I noticed I'd say a discrepancy, because on a merge request, when you include an image on the description, it opens up on a new tab on the editor because it has the target blank attribute. But issues and comments also, if I'm not mistaken, they replace the page, and it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It's one of our biggest frustrations, which is the descriptions and issues, merges, comment boxes, and wikis all render Markdown slightly differently, and they all treat Markdown slightly differently. So our goal is to unify that using the content editor. So if you want to have a look at that, I'd advise checking out the content editor direction page and seeing, we'll be starting with issues, and then we're kind of building up from there. It's already in wikis though at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed this because I was trying to fix this so that all the images would open on a new tab, and then I noticed that some places already did that.
Yeah, at the moment it's a little different. We'll fix it.
yeah.
Is there any other questions?
I took the MR, opening MR, and when you have it assigned with an issue, it doesn't get the labels.
Say that one more time.
I checked MRs that happened were opened with during the hackathon that were linked with specific issues, and it doesn't get the labels. So I think that's something nice to consider. I'm gonna open an issue for that.
That's really good. That'd be a really, really good one to open an issue for. And it follows up for my question for the community, which is, what would be the most helpful things? What could we do in GitLab, either in terms of metadata or in terms of extending our GitLab bot? What could we do to make contributing to GitLab more frictionless?
Sorry, was that a question? Because I was interrupted and didn't fully follow.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was asking if there was anything that you've noticed that we could do on the GitLab side. So like, as an example there, I've just learned that on the community side, if you prefix a merge with an issue number, it doesn't automatically fill out the labels. We could fix that on the GitLab side, and that would make contributing a slightly nicer experience. Are there other things that we could do either with the metadata or with the GitLab bot that would make contributing more frictionless?
Well, one thing was done recently, because now with the GitLab bot, you can assign reviewers. And that was one of the main missing things, I guess, because it was, you could ping the reviewers, but then they would have to assign themselves and all of that. With the ability to actually assign the reviewers, now that's really an improvement.
Nice. Okay, super stuff. Yeah, and if anybody else has any specific pain points that they find, feel free to update asynchronously, or feel free to throw it into the Discord. specifically, I'm always very, very curious as to how people find or where people's pain points are and how we can make it a little bit easier to get people's merges in front of the right team members.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, David. Any questions or any comments, anything else? From David to anyone else, anything else that you'd like to discuss maybe? It's an open call, it's an off call, so let's bring your own topic, not just food or drink.
How is the interaction on the Discord server? I didn't even know we had one.
It depends. Because there are some channels more active than others, I guess. Mainly because some channels are dedicated to, for example, support and divided to self-hosted and not self-hosted and all those things. So those channels actually don't get used that much because only a community member has to know that there actually is a Discord server. B, you have to have a problem and ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of a good thing that there are not many questions. And the other main channel that's actually used is the lounge, but it gets some attention. I mean, there are more active users than others, but it's relatively active.
Nice. Okay, super stuff. Interesting.
Yeah, just from the community relations point of view in regards to the Discord server, this is something that started from community. Also, it's equivalent to Slack instance that exists out there. It's a
Mm-hmm.
community run edition, community run as well. So we're trying to figure out, we're working with the owner of the Discord to see whether we can take ownership or not, because Gitter, the tool that we have right now, it's really good because there is the bridge with Slack. But we're also, what we're trying to figure out is how we can bring GitLab team members and community closer instead of like separating them. So I'm gonna be sharing a question within GitLab, trying to ask GitLab team members what is the tool that they might be more interested using for communicating with community, would be Slack or Discord, because we've asked the community through the contributor survey, and community said Slack and then Discord are the two tools that we're more comfortable and would like to use. So
yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I'd be very curious to see what the feedback is. I would assume most people opt for Slack, but we'll see.
I mean, in worst case scenario, we can have multiple bridges from Slack to Discord, because Discord is more structured. There are some channels there, different channels, different activity. So we can have multiple.
Yeah.
I will get a comment from Sridhar. Well, something that I like with Discord and something that Slack just put it is the ability to talk as well and have like a audio.
Yeah, that's very nice and very, very helpful.
I think Sridhar was something to say.
I just wanted to say that community office hours is very great thing to start like contributing to GitLab. Like I started attending community office hours like before hackathons, and I learned a lot from attending it, and I learned mostly by contributing to it, contributing in GitLab. So this is very great thing that you guys are doing it, and it's very helpful for community also. So it's a matter of time, like more people will come in community office hours.
Yeah, that's another thing. Thanks for sharing that. Scheduling is also a problem in order to be able to support all time zones. For example, we have community in New Zealand. They wanted to join, but it's like around 3 a.m. right now. I'm pretty sure in India it's for late as well, right? It should be something like 12, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really difficult to accommodate all the different time zones. So maybe we need to do some rolling one, like every week to change the time zone to accommodate different time zones. But also that's why we're recording. And yeah, David, if you have an idea about who to invite next week, that would be a nice, or anyone has an idea, reaching out to people.
Yeah, happily. Are you looking ideally for engineers or for coaches or for managers? Like what kind of a person would you like to bring on ideally?
Something that we got from the community is like in the previous calls is like how to understand the code base in a way and the change. For example, the experience that the example that we did was it didn't require a lot of changes in the code or to understand. Brian last time went way more like in depth, more technical about the things where things live. So I think we wanted to. I think a desire was to explore more like how to better understand where things live in the code base, which is crazy to do. I mean, not to do it. It's difficult, let's say, because the code is huge. But you know, try to maybe I'll find a few issues and trying to see if I can find people to help us address them and you know have them to share their way of thinking. Okay, this is what the issue says. What this is where the source is, or this is how I'm gonna find the source code.
Super.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll reach out to a couple of people. I have a couple of engineers in mind who are very good on the architecture side. They'd be very good at, you know, given an issue with absolutely no context, how do I figure out where the code is? That'd be quite a cool topic.
Yes, that would be quite cool. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, nice. All right, sounds good.
That's basically what we try to do on our community office, our calls.
No, that's cool. That's one of the hardest parts of navigating the product. I think probably then what we would benefit the most from is I'll reach out to a couple of front end engineers and I'll reach out to a couple of back end engineers because depending on what part you're diving into of the app, it's going to be a little bit different on how you actually track down the source code. And then what might be good as well, I can reach out to one of our site architects to give a kind of maybe a high level overview of how the different projects fit together. Because you're not always going to be in GitLab.com. Sometimes it might be, you know, it might be a Gitly thing, it might be a workhorse thing, it might be a shell thing. So leave that with me, Christos, and I'll see if I can sort that out.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, I'm going to have to jump. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for having me. I will touch base with you about seeing who I can get for the next time for a couple of deep dives into the code, and best of luck. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
All right, friends. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss? Just a reminder that we announced the hackathon, the winner of the hackathon from the Q1. Sorry, Q2 hackathon announced the winners. The link to the announcement is here in the agenda. We continue our coffee circles. And again, if you have any issues with running with CI/CD minutes while contributing, there is a known bug. We're trying to solve it. But in the meantime, if you're running out or about to run out of CI/CD minutes, please reach out to me either directly or through just tag me on an issue on GitLab, and I will address it as soon as possible.
I still have minutes.
Good.
All right.
All right. Anything else? No. I wish you all happy traveling. I have a good because Siddharth is traveling. Have a good night, you all, because I think that most of us are like Midwest in a way. So yeah, have a great day, great evening, and great GitLab day. So everyone who's watching us,
Okay. Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks. Ciao.